I am a very analytical person. So every time when I make a big decision, I would look at a lot of data and then evaluate a lot of data points, and then based on that, analyze and then deliver a result and then build a strategy to the rest of the team. Yeah. So I think it is very important that to have a game plan and then to have a reasoning about the game plan that we're rolling out and why.
Welcome to the Learn Podcast, where we interview top leaders in tech and learn about how they're building the world's most innovative companies. I'm Ted Blosser, CEO and co-founder of WorkRamp, the world's first learning cloud platform. Our mission is to help professionals reach their full potential through learning, and the Learn Podcast is where we can learn from the best leaders at the top of their game. Please subscribe, leave us a rating, and we hope you enjoy the episode. Everyone, welcome back to the Learn Podcast. We have an amazing guest on today. We have Shuo Wang, the co-founder and CRO at Deel. Shuo, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dad, for having me today. Thanks, everyone. Happy to be here, of course.
Well, I randomly met Shuo at a Salesforce Ventures and Bessemer Ventures event. It was the Cloud 100. And when I met her, I said, you have to come on our podcast, share more about the Deel story. And what we want to talk about is also how Deel is one of the best remote first companies as well. But before we jump into it, Shuo, can you give us an elevator pitch on both Deel? And then after that, let's talk about an elevator pitch on yourself as well.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for having me here today. I am Shuo Wang, co-founder and CRO at Deel. So what we do at Deel is we're building an all-in-one HR platform for global teams. So we help companies simplify every aspect of managing an international workforce, from culture and onboarding to local payroll and compliance. Deel works for independent contractors and full-time employees in more than 150 countries compliantly. And then we also help companies to set up entities, offices, and within a matter of minutes. Yeah.
And then how about yourself? Tell us your journey about getting to Deel and starting Deel.
I have a very technical background, so I studied mechanical engineering, focusing on robotics at MIT. And then after graduate from MIT, I went back to Beijing, where I lived till the age of 16 and built my first company. Sold that company to iRobot and then moved back to San Francisco and then built Deel. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, selling a company that young and then starting Deel. We're also another Y Combinator alum, but you guys are way more successful. I will have to say that. One of the fastest companies to 100 million ARR, if anybody doesn't know that. But all right, where I would love to start is, again, today we're going to focus on how to build an amazing remote first company. Deel is literally one of the best shining examples of that. The topic I want to go through first is around hiring. A quick question for you, Shuo. Can you give us the scale of Deel right now in terms of employees that you have?
Yeah, so we have close to 3,000 people across 110 different countries. So we are fully remote. We're probably the largest remote company in the world right now. Yeah.
That's amazing. So 3,000 people. You probably have a lot of learnings around hiring. Can you give us your philosophy around hiring, especially when you can't meet these people in person? Give us your philosophy on how do you find great talent while you're running a remote first organization?
That's a great question. For Deel, we fully believe in talents, right? Because talents build the culture, build the foundation, build the company, and how everyone can work together with everyone is definitely the key for us to scale and then scale faster and execute faster. So what we do is that at the very early days of Deel, Alex and myself, we interviewed every single employee. So I think we interviewed our first 400 employee, at least for myself, right? And then Alex still today interview a lot of ICs that he is directly managing. For me, for every single sales rep at the early days, I make sure that we are culturally aligned, we are fast learners and then builders as well. And then two cultures that we focus on at the Deel is number one, deal speed, which is fast at execution, and then client first, which we really care about our clients and then focus on giving them the best experience. Yeah. So I think a couple of things that we're looking for at the time of hiring and interviewing is, at least for me, for myself, when building where the foundation of the sales team, I'm looking for whether the sales rep is analytical or not, and then whether they're logical and then can explain a product very well. And then the third one is that whether they what they're looking for is aligned with Deel culture, and then how we think our mission is that, and how we can grow together and scale together. Yeah.
It's a great set of criteria. I always have this debate with our team internally on length of interviews, how many times should you see a candidate, how many people you should have on the panel, should that be consistent? So there's all these different variables, and I've been personally, and we're remote first as well too, not at your scale, but remote first, and we've always been tweaking the interview panels and the interview rhythm with our candidates. Do you have any recommendations on what you found as the sweet spot for how to actually conduct the interviews? If you could maybe get one level deeper into
Yeah.
how to actually run interviews well, that would be great.
Yeah, happy to share. So typically, still today, I interview, take a sales team, for example. I interview ICs, individual AEs, reps, as well as sales managers, directors, and sales leaders, right? So for directors and then sales leaders, I typically spend 30 to 45 minutes, and then we have take home tasks. And then for individual reps, web managers, I spend 15 minutes to interview them. So during the 15 minutes, there are three things again that I'm looking for: whether they're analytical, whether they will be able to explain me a concept or a product that they are selling or they used to sell very well, and then number three is what they're looking for is aligned with what the deal can provide them, right? So it's three typical questions that I would ask them during the 15 minutes of my interview is: number one, what is their quota like, and what is their attainment, and how is their attainment being calculated, right? So if a rep cannot explain their quota or cannot explain what is their attainment, I don't think they really care about their sales commissions, which is already a bad sign, right? And then if they can explain me the comp structure, quota structure very well, that means they understand the data side of things, so which is very important. So that's number one. Number two, what I also ask is just ask them that, whatever that they're selling today, what are the biggest pinpoint, what the biggest value that the product can provide to their prospects. Yeah.
Have you seen people fail that often where they struggle selling their own product?
I think people are like sellers or reps are typically very good at selling, but it is just whether the reasoning is convincing or not. Yeah, because I am a technical person, right? So being logical, being convincing is what I'm looking for. So if you can sell a technical person or a very technical processing person, then I think you'll be able to sell to everyone. Yeah, you just need to be convincing. That's it.
I love your approach where it's not like, hey, we don't need to spend hours and hours with someone. We have a set criteria and we know what we're looking for. What I like to do, and that's I think a great way to hire. What I like to do is switch over into what I call cultural rhythm. And so Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn, he gave this podcast on how every company has its own unique cultural rhythm and essentially activities they do internally. I'm curious, what are the cultural rhythms that Deel has either is currently running or has run in the past that you love to share more about?
I for Deal, we as I mentioned earlier, two biggest things that we're looking for, what we focus on, what the value of Deal is. Number one, deal speed, which we execute fast, and then we identify problems, we find solutions, and then we solve the problem fast. So that's what we call deal speed. Another one is care. We care for our own people. We care for our clients. We care for the talents that we're sending payments to. We're issuing salary to, right? So make sure that everyone is feeling being taken care of by Deel, and then we provide really good services, make sure that they're compliant, they always receive their salary on time, all the time, and also if they have any local logistic issues, taxes issues, we're there for them. We'll be able to help them, right? So like things like that could be very stressful, and as long as they understand and rely on Deal, I think I feel very accomplished. Yeah, those are the two cultures that we emphasize a lot at the Deal.
And in terms of reinforcing those two values, I'd love to see if you can get into specifics too. Is do you do, for example, monthly all hands, weekly all hands? What's like the meeting rhythm when you have a remote first culture? How do you enforce those two values on an ongoing basis? Kind of curious about that.
Yes, we do all hands every week and then remotely. And then every other week, we focus on different topics. We create alignment on product, we create alignment on strategy. And then my co founder and I will often do Ask Me Anything in AMA. Right. So I do think that is very effective. But another thing is today we have, as I mentioned, we have towards 3,000 people across 110 countries that we're hiring talents from. So coordinate and then make sure that everyone joins the all hands is a little bit tough. So I think what's the most efficient that I identified is how the managers, how the founders, apply those values into their day-to-day cadence. Where like if we are building a system, we're building processes to incentivize, to encourage our team to follow those two values, right? And then also we don't have office. Slack is our office, right? So we live on Slack. It totally reacts to what is my response time to my team whenever they ask me anything. What is my help, my support to them when they ask me my feedback and then ask me to solve something for them, right? And then if I am on top of their problems, if I am on top of helping them in a very fast way, be able to answer them within minutes, or even within an hour or two, that shows that I really care about them, and then that shows that how fast I am reacting to a lot of the requests out there. So that will help my team to understand that hey, this is the culture, this is the standard, this is the expectation, and then this is how I will need to apply.
Sounds like you live and breathe on Slack to run a global company across every different time zone. What's the one tip you would recommend to remote first companies for Slack? Is it the response time you mentioned, or is there anything else where you're like, do this and you will be golden, or you will be in a really good spot from a Slack perspective?
I think I always reply. No matter if you cannot reply right now within seconds, that's okay. There's a very good feature. What's the newest Slack is called Save It for Later, and then highlights as well. So I think by the end of the day, clean up your Save It for Later item list. That will help the team a lot. Yeah. So I do think it is really from the founders or from the managers how we react will form how the team react.
Okay, cool. Just to reiterate, it's almost set a great example. Things like response times are key, and then treat it like you would treat your email inboxes. Try to clear it out by the end of every day so you're responsive to people. I love it. Okay. I want to shift into a subset of culture for the team you run. So you're the CRO, you run the go to market organization. I think a lot of people think about sales orgs as like the sales pit, and you're all in person together and you're making cold calls and you can hear each other and understand how to sell. But in a remote first world, you don't have that, right? You're selling alone in a room by yourself. Maybe you have a gong call recording people can listen to afterwards. But how are you building a great sales culture given you're in a remote first world? Give us some tips on how to do that.
I am still exploring, right? So I'm still trying to learn that every day, be adaptive and then be iterative and then understand that hey, what are some of the things that we try to really identify with the team. I think one of the things that we start to do is build a kudos channel. So every time we see a good pitch or like any reps build a really good presentation template, we would share in the kudos team and then make sure that, hey, I understand what is this deal, are we highlighting this deal, and then why we give kudos to the team, right? So I do think like, that is in a way very important to apply a lot of the learnings and then experience to the rest of the team.
I want to ask something about the kudos channel. I'm sure you have a few more things to talk about, but the kudos channel, is that kudos usually pulled out from the managers for their reps, or are the reps themselves, is it very organic bottom up where the reps themselves are sharing information about their deals? I'm curious, where's the point of entry into sharing great sales practices?
Yeah. So at the very beginning is mainly the managers highlighting like, hey, we closed this deal. This is how we closed the deal. Who are the reps on this deal? And then we give kudos to. And then right now, I feel like, a lot of their peers give kudos to other reps. So for example, we would have North America reps work together with EMEA rep, and then they feel like, they closed this big deal together, and then they give kudos to each other. Or even like, within the same region, a mid-market rep helped SMB rep to close the deal. The SMB rep would give kudos to the mid-market rep as well. So we really encourage that and incentivize the support internally, and then the cross-regional like, teamwork can really bring a lot of value and efficiencies. Yeah.
Hey everyone, I want to interrupt our interview with Shuo Wang. We are talking about how to build an amazing remote first company. One of the critical tools you need to build a remote first culture is an LMS. If you're looking for LMS, look no further than WorkRamp. We are building the all-in-one learning cloud to train your employees, customers, and partners. Check us out at www.workramp.com to learn more. Now back to the episode. So we have the kudos channel. Is there anything else you would recommend in terms of tips for building this sales culture, or even let's call it even managing a remote first sales team well? Any other big tips?
I am a very analytical person. So every time when I make a big decision, I would look at a lot of data and then evaluate a lot of data points, and then based on that analyze and then deliver a result and then build a strategy to the rest of the team. Yeah. So I think it is very important that to have a game plan, and then to have a reasoning about the game plan that we're rolling out and why. Because sales team, they're great, right? But they also like, have a lot of requests, and then they consistently ask you a lot of questions about why, right? So they need to be convinced so that they can sell, and then they can convince other people. So make them be convincing and then make them align with your strategy can really like, create the team culture, and then to create the alignment internally so that, we can be very efficient whenever we roll anything new or we make a big changes and decision moving forward. Yeah.
When you say data, are you going natively on Salesforce, or are you building additional tools on top of that to give you that purview into the environment?
Yeah. Oh wow, two is another another big thing, right? So it's for any sales team, because today we're running a very global sales team. We have about 600 sales reps, and then we have different coverages, Americas, including Latin and North America, as well as whole Europe, whole APAC, right? And then just the culture difference, and then the different regions and different company incentives, different pitching points, different customers and segments that we're covering. Like, it's very hard to create, so like, using one set of tools, or using like, enablement, one set of enablement tools to build the training programs and the culture and then the enablement, right? But we're trying our very best to keep Salesforce as aligned as possible. Yeah.
Couldn't even imagine just the currencies you're dealing with, and how to even normalize that. So I bet you it's super difficult. All right, I want to switch gears just slightly. So we talked about building a sales culture, and the sales team needs great products to sell. Deal's been known to rapidly build and release products because really you're only 4 years old right now. 2019 was when you were founded. And again, one of the fastest companies to 100 million ARR. So you had a lot of product innovation at the right time. So tell us, what is your secret for the pace of product innovation? You talked about speed as a cultural value earlier, but maybe if you could give us maybe a little more of the secret sauce on how do you move so fast when building products?
Alex is my co-founder. He's leading product, right? And then Alex is a great product person, and then he moves very fast on products. And we're always shipping, we're always delivering new features, new products that benefits our clients, right? I think one thing that we did very well is client interviews. And then I remember at the very beginning of Y Combinator, we spend the majority of our time interviewing our batch, and then a lot of founders give us really good feedback on what we can build, and then what is the product that they want can help them to hire internationally or send salaries to a lot of the international talents, right? So we interviewed around 200 companies, 400 people, and then still today, a lot of their feedback from the early interviews we're still building, right? And then consistently, our team be very on top of client requests and then provide feedback to our product team so that we can move very fast and then build the features and the products align with our client.
Do you have like a whole research function, or do you have the PMs and or designers talk to customers? I'm curious, like what's the I've seen companies who have multiple layers. I remember we had an employee who said, "Hey, this is great at WorkRamp. We can actually talk to customers directly as PMs, whereas previous companies you had to go through multiple layers." Curious who gets exposure to customers to do those interviews to rapidly innovate.
Yeah, it's mainly sales and the success team that talks with clients and then provide feedback to products. But if product team wants to chat with the client directly, we're open to it, right? And then we just need to make sure that the client wants to chat with us, and then that's it. We're a very open and then flat organization.
Love it. Love it. When you say flat, you don't need to give a specific number, but do you have a philosophy of being flatter in terms of scope of span of control for all of your managers? Is that a personal philosophy you try to drive? Is just to be flatter than most orgs in general?
I think since I already spent so much time interviewing people and then make sure that everyone joined deal is like self-sufficient and then be able to finish your project independently. I actually give a lot of freedom and then a lot of independency to my direct reports, right? So that I don't want to become the blocker. And then I believe they are very strong managers and then very strong talents, and then they have great ideas, and then I can help them to assign priorities, and then I can provide feedback, and then I can point out that hey, what are some additional data points that we can evaluate, right? But the thing is, I trust them. I think they are the best talents, for the company, for the team. So they have the freedom and then to do whatever that is beneficial to their team. Yeah.
I want to close you with one question, then we'll go into the learn a lightning round. The question I want to ask you is actually around people leadership in a remote first environment. If you had to give the audience one tip to being a better leader when you're running a remote first company, what would that tip be?
Wow, that's a hard question. Yeah, give me some ideas. Like, what are you thinking about? Like, what directions? Yeah.
One tip I've had or I've learned is over communication in remote first, because you think, hey, you can present on a slide. Like we just did our all hands the other day, and I thought everyone knew this framework by heart. And like I asked it in the chat as a trivia question, and like no one knew it. I was like, wait, I've been talking about this for like 3 months, every week for 3 months, and no one knows it still. So that was one I learned personally, is like, especially remote first, because someone could be distracted. It's just harder to pay attention on Zoom just in general in terms of absorbing information. So I'm more curious if you have something like that that you've picked up. You're like, you have to nail this as a founder or leader or a leader of a, I think you said 600 rep org. I'm curious if you have any big tips.
During remote culture or the remote setup, you automatically just take on a lot of Zoom meetings with your team internally. Yeah. And then because it's easy, people just go to your calendar and then book a 30 minutes or like a 45 minutes and then try what's you, right? And then, but the thing is, a lot of the time, the meetings could be very time consuming and then it may not be as productive as it looks like. So I very encourage my team, also other leaders, just to do a lot of like async and then build a really good reporting strategy. And then also like, a lot of dashboards and the data reports, especially during sales, right? So data is very important. What is your pipeline? Did we close this deal or not? And then what is coming next? And then what is your headcount planning? Did we hire this, up to against the headcount plan or not? It's very straightforward, right? And then I do think for effective communication, great reporting and then alignment is better than Zoom meetings, 45 minutes Zoom meetings. Yeah.
I love that feedback. It's a lot like, I believe Shopify did it with their I think it's Shopify. I always confuse it with Shopify or Spotify, but I think it's Shopify with reducing meetings on their calendar. But it sounds like you're very pro, hey, conserve your time, make sure every meeting is impactful, and then what can be async, move it async, and or report on it really easily. So, okay, love that. All right, I'm gonna go to learn rapid fire round. This is where I'm going to ask you just a few questions in the theme of learning, and love to get your 1 or 2 line answer to each. So the first question is, what is your greatest source of learning right now? Things like a book, blog, etc., that you're learning the most from right now?
I learned a lot from my managers.
Learning from people on your team, even though you're the co-founder, it can teach you more as well too. I love that. All right, how about big piece of career advice beyond selling a company at 16? I don't know what age you sold. You said you started at 16?
No. I started my sales career at the age of 16. I
Oh,
helped
got
my
it.
mom to sell, but I moved to the States at the age of 16. That's
Oh,
when
that's
I
right. Okay.
started to sell.
But but my main point was you've had a great career. You're running an amazing company. What would you give as a tip to aspiring CROs? What tip would you get career wise?
Data. Be analytical as much analytical as you can be. Always leverage good data to make good decisions. Yeah.
Love that. Be data driven. All right. Last question I'm going to ask you
Yeah.
is, if you had more time or all the time in the world, if you weren't running Deal, what's the area you would love to learn more about?
Because I studied robotics, right? So, and then I always trying to understand that, if we can record human memories, every single piece of human memories, right? And then digitize those memories into like a really good data and build models. And then based on input parameters, and then what happened to TAT today, may be able to apply to what Shuo is going to do in the future, right? So in a way, if we can build models and then record all human memories, we should be able to predict future, especially a lot of historical data, a lot of events happened that impacts huge social happenings or movement or historical changes. I think there should be a predictive model that predicts what's going to happen in the future. So that's something that I'm always very interested.
Have you watched that show Westworld? Have you ever seen that show?
Yeah,
Oh, it's a
yeah,
lot like that,
Western,
right?
yeah, that,
Just
like
remind
that.
me I think it's season 3, you're reminding me of that, but that's amazing to, hear, and some of the stuff I think they're doing at Neuralink is getting close to that, but that's very cool. Shuo, thanks so much for sharing more about how to run a amazing remote first company. You are leading the charge on it with Deal, and it's so great learning from you today.
Yeah. Thanks, Dad.
Thanks for listening to the Learn podcast. If you're a fan of the podcast, do us 2 favors. One is subscribe to it so you can get the latest update of our most recent episodes. And 2, write a short review of the podcast. This helps us get discovered in the broader podcast community. Thanks again.